Well, the White House is facing questions about whether Jared Kushner can continue on as one of Donald Trump's top foreign policy advisors after his top secret security clearance was stripped away. Mr. Trump's son-in-law will no longer be able to access some highly classified material after the move by Chief of Staff John Kelly. Well, that news comes amid another bombshell report by the Washington Post that officials in at least 4 countries have discussed ways they can exploit and manipulate Kushner to their advantage. And that's not the only headache for the White House. We've now learned that Donald Trump's business dealings with Russia before the presidential campaign are now under the microscope in the Russia investigation. Well, let's bring in White House reporter Stephen Collison to help break all this down for us. Stephen, there certainly is a lot of bombshell developments to discuss. Let's start firstly with the news that Trump's business dealings in Moscow before he started his run for president are now under scrutiny. And this is a man who did not release his tax returns and did not want those business dealings under the microscope.
Yes, and this is a significant development, I think, in the Mueller investigation because it raises the question of whether the special counsel is trying to find out whether there was any compromising information on Donald Trump that the Russians may have by virtue of his previous business dealings in Russia. We don't know that that is a prime focus of the investigation, but the fact that Mueller is asking questions about this sort of takes us into the territory that it's possible that he could be looking to see whether there are any reasons why Donald Trump may have tried to potentially obstruct the Mueller probe and the probe by FBI Chief James Comey before that. So it gets to the whole issue of whether there was a rationale, if you like, for corruption, as well as the issue of whether the Russians did indeed have compromising information on Trump before he ran for election, which could explain perhaps some of the positions he's taken towards Russia and the leniency really with which he's dealt with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and the way he's not really responded strongly to the findings of Mueller and the findings of the US intelligence agencies that Russia interfered in the 2016 US election.
And of course, let's have a look at Jared Kushner. A lot to break down here. He is President Trump's son-in-law, and according to these reports, at least 4 countries were trying to manipulate him. Those countries being the United Arab Emirates, China, Israel, Mexico. They reportedly discussed ways that they could benefit from business dealings with him and use his lack of government experience. How odd was it that Kushner had these meetings without alerting the National Security Council, without sharing the details of those meetings?
Well, it's remarkable, and these revelations, I think, really cast doubt about whether he can continue to serve as a senior foreign policy aide for the president. That those countries you mentioned are all part of his portfolio. So you have a situation where Jared Kushner now will not be able to get the most top secret intelligence on these countries and these regions before he goes into meetings with leaders from these countries. He's got one hand tied behind his back, if you like. And the fact that these countries that you mentioned in the Middle East, Mexico and China have looked for ways to exploit his business entanglements, the high levels of debt that his family holds on real estate ventures, makes it almost impossible for him to have any leverage. The fact this is known publicly raises all sorts of questions about, you know, the status of his role and whether he can be an effective foreign policy advisor to the president. He's one of the most trusted people in the president's inner circle. So this is also a huge blow to Trump because it's really striking at the heart of his administration and his family, and it's going to raise, you know, great stress, I think, and pressure on the White House at the same time as we've talked about how the Mueller probe is really accelerating and getting much closer to the president himself.
And Stephen, just looking at the president's Twitter account, the president of the United States has just called the Attorney General disgraceful. Now, this is the man he nominated, the man who endorsed him before any other senator. Disgraceful is what he said. Let me just read it to you. Why is AG Jeff Sessions asking the Inspector General to investigate potentially massive FISA abuse? Will take forever, has no prosecution power, already late with reports on Comey, etc. Isn't the IG guy an Obama guy? Why not use Justice Department lawyers? Disgraceful. Clearly, again, we are seeing the president using his Twitter account to really speak his mind and show sort of the chaos within his inner circle.
Right, so in any normal administration, the president publicly attacking his own attorney general would be a massive occurrence. The attorney general will probably be out the door within about 10 minutes. This is not the first time the president has attacked Jeff Sessions. We know he's exceedingly exercised because the attorney general, who was a key figure in his campaign, recused himself of the oversight of the Russia probe, and that's what really exercises the president. This issue is about the famous dossier and whether the FBI, as some Republicans claim, abused its powers in getting a surveillance warrant for a former Trump foreign policy aide, Carter Page. But really what it comes down to is the president's extreme anger and frustration at the Russia probe and the role that Sessions has played into it. But it makes you think that Sessions is again on very thin ice.
Very thin ice indeed. All right, Stephen Collison, a lot to stay across this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.